are these people?
Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Do you know this? I feel like Jimmy Vollmer for a second. Have you heard about this? So the first one is a Twitter set of threads that I found from a good friend of the show, the network, Tyler Popp. He has the Fix Collective, and he wrote up a couple of threads. He saw what was happening with the Reporters Not Borders report on both the Worldwide Press Freedom Index as well as the Ukraine index. There's a Ukraine report. So he breaks all this down, and he's hopping mad about it, and I totally respect that and am right with him. So I figured let's go through this amazing thread of stuff that he pulled together to talk about exactly what is this? What's this? What's this? There we go. Okay, Reporters Without Borders. All right, so this is their World Press Freedom Index, and he starts by saying that this is a betrayal of press freedom propped up by Western imperial hypocrisy, an expose. Published that this week, and I'm like, dude, this is great. We need to cover this on How Do We Miss That? He starts by saying in the sordid arena of global journalism, and he's a Canadian journalist and analyst, and I think he's done some spaces on Twitter as well. Reporters Without Borders postures as a guardian of press freedom, but its actions expose a far uglier reality. It's a servile instrument of Western imperialist agendas, cherry-picking cases that align with NATO's propaganda while abandoning journalists who dare to expose the empire's crimes. Bankrolled by the Open Society Foundation, that's of course George Soros, and his son Alex, the National Endowment for Democracy, or NED, we know how bad that is as far as funding propaganda, the European Council, and cozy with tech giants like Google and Meta. Reporters Without Border, or RSF's hypocrisy, is starkly revealed in its selective outrage over high-profile killings like those of Jamal Khashoggi and Shireen Abu Akleh, American citizens, contrasted with its deafening silence on journalists targeted by Ukraine's Myartovitz hit list, right? Or persecuted for reporting on Palestine, Syria, and Iraq. This expose dissects RSF's corrupt funding, its role as a NATO mouthpiece, and its shameful neglect of journalists like Kit Clarenberg, Richard Medhurst, Sarah Wilkinson, activist, Eva Bartlett, Gonzalo Lira, and others, laying bare an organization that betrays the very principles it claims to uphold. And again, I don't think that's much of a surprise to many people in the chat. Likely, however, it may be a surprise to some. So this was their propaganda monitor, okay, launched on Russia, which is hilarious, right? So here goes funding, which is a cesspool of Western elite control. Right, RSF's financial underpinnings are a putrid swamp of Western influence, rendering its claim to impartiality a grotesque farce. Open Society Foundation, fueled by Soros's billions, pumps money into RSF, tethering it to neoliberal agendas that prioritize Western hegemony over genuine press freedom. The NED, a U.S.-funded front notorious for orchestrating regime change, further compromises RSF's independence with its history of meddling in global politics. The European Council, representing bureaucratic interests, ensures RSF's that they parrot NATO's geopolitical line. How convenient all of this kind of fits together. While direct funding from Google, Meta, or the Knight Foundation is less explicit, RSF's digital journalism initiatives and partnerships with these tech giants suggest a shared mission to shape global narratives. In 2005, they were exposed for accepting funds from the Center for a Free Cuba, which of course is linked to the USAID and NED, right? That's U.S. funded, CIA funded. So they're trying to push narrative, sparking accusations of serving as a neocon tool against Havana, because it was. This financial web transformed RSF into a mouthpiece for Western interests, incapable of defending journalists who challenge imperialist narratives without jeopardizing its own funding. So basically, they got on board with the T, and so what are we going to do? So he continues here, but the hypocrisy is nauseating. They cloak themselves in the mantle of press freedom, right? While their purse strings are pulled by entities that thrive on censorship and repression. How can an organization claim neutrality when its budget is beholden to the very powers that silence dissent? The answer is simple and clear. It cannot. All right. So RSS funding is a deliberate handcuff, ensuring that its advocacy serves the West's geopolitical chessboard, whereas cases like Khashoggi's 2018 murder are weaponized to vilify Saudi Arabia. But journalists like Gonzalo Lira, love or hate him, were killed by a NATO ally and were erased from its narrative. They won't even mention his name. The financial servitude exposes RSF as a propagandist, not a protector of truth. Right? Yep. NATO propaganda, right? So now he's got the double standard here. And he's literally talking about the difference in what's happening in Russian threats to journalists, right? Launched on that report, that Russian report, the propaganda monitor, this one, right? So they're, where are we here? Yep, they're amplifying NATO's narrative while burying inconvenient truths. Its Swoboda platform, which launched again in November of 2023 to counter Russian propaganda, fixates on Russian threats to journalists, which they have made some, but not nearly as many as we've seen happening in the West, painting Ukraine as a democratic bastion, despite documented press freedom violations, including that guy Bogdan Srodovich, who's still in a prison right now. It's been more than a year. Go to World Socialist website. They'll tell you, you can read all about that. RSF's 2024 World Press Freedom Index acknowledges a worrying decline in Ukrainian media autonomy, citing surveillance of journalists exposing corruption, but this is drowned out by its relentless focus on Russian actions. They're Russia obsessed. Russian scum. I'm waiting to hear Keith Olbermann. All right.
Okay.
In Palestine, though, RSF reports over 145 journalists killed since October 23.
Russian scum!
Thank you. But soft pedals Israel's role, of course. I don't know how they do that because they're the ones who killed the journalists, avoiding the full scope of Western complicity. In Syria and Iraq, RSF's coverage is sparse. No surprise there because the West doesn't have very much coverage, sidestepping cases that challenge U.S. and allied narratives. Well, we know someone who was in Syria that they would never listen to.
Mm-hmm.
The double standard is maddening. Again, RSF's condemnation of Saudi Arabia for Khashoggi's brutal murder, dismembered in Istanbul's consulate, serves as a geopolitical baseball bat against Riyadh, yet it conveniently ignores the U.S.'s role in arming the kingdom. Of course. Similarly, RSF's advocacy for Shireen, the Al Jazeera journalist, demands accountability but stops short of implicating Israel's Western backers. What a surprise. Meanwhile, journalists like Eva Bartlett, targeted for documenting Ukrainian shelling in Donbass, as well as the pedal mines, or Gonzalo Lira, tortured and killed in Ukrainian custody, receive no mention. RSF's selective outrage, and Reporters Without Borders should at least mention it. I mean, the guy was killed, like it or not. All right?
Yeah.
RSF's selective outrage exposes it as a propagandist tool leveraging high-profile cases to demonize adversaries while shielding NATO's proxies from scrutiny. The hypocrisy betrays the very journalists they claim to protect, prioritizing geopolitical point scoring over universal press freedom. What a surprise. And there's Shireen Abu Akleh, who was murdered in Israel in May of 2021. And then you've got Eva Bartlett, who has been a guest on INN News at least once, if not more. And I believe they're hoping to have her back on. And that's a cokehead named, who used to be an actor and he's now the president of the Ukraine temporarily. But of course, he's gone past his election, so technically he's an unelected dictator at this point. All right, appointed by NATO effectively and backed by their weaponry and money. All right. So here's about Ukraine's war on journalists and RSF's complicit silence, right? Their refusal to address journalists killed or targeted by Ukraine is a damning indictment of its moral bankruptcy. Ukraine's Myrotovets website, sorry, I keep getting that wrong, Myrotovets, a public hit list linked to its intelligence services, and maybe even the CIA, allegedly, but we don't know, we're not going to say for sure, names journalists, activists, and others perceived as enemies for providing Russian viewpoints, Russian scum, there we go again, often leading to harassment.
We're not doing well. Let me call the Russians to help.
Yeah. Leading to harassment, doxing, or assassination. There was actually a member of this network at one point that was on that list. The site's incendiary rhetoric, like Russians and other enemies should be killed, has been linked to targeted violence. I believe Daria Dugina was on that list and then was marked as eliminated once she was murdered. Yet RSF has issued no condemnation, weird, choosing instead to shield a Western-backed regime. Never saw that before. This silence is not an oversight, but complicity, enabling Ukraine's state-sanctioned terror against dissenting voices. Again, Gonzalo Lira, the Chilean-American journalist, was arrested in 2022, allegedly tortured, and died in Ukrainian custody in January of 2024 for his critical YouTube videos. His death sparked global outrage by some, yet RSF issued not a single statement exposing its allegiance to Western patrons, Ukraine's Western patrons. And then he names Eva Bartlett, again listed on the website, faces death threats for her Donbass reporting. All right. She's been documenting Ukrainian shelling of civilians. All right. And again, the use of illegal pedal mines, which we reported on this show almost 3 summers ago at this point. All right. Her Donbass reporting documenting that RSF ignores her courage. And then you've got Johnny Miller, the British journalist. He was a guest on Tara's show on this network about 2 years ago, was placed on the Ukrainian kill list for his Donbass coverage, facing threats from ultra-nationalists, yet RSF remains mute. You got George Eliason, another American journalist in Donbass, similarly ignored due to his anti-Western stance. And then he calls out the hypocrisy about Evan Gershkovich, right? That he was exchanged and they made a big deal out of that, right? Their shameful abdication of the website has been linked to a chilling roster of assassinations and targeted killings. And he lists them. Oles Buzina, a Ukrainian journalist critical of post-2014 Kiev, was assassinated in 2015. He mentions Daria Dugina here, a Russian journalist killed in 2022 car bombing. Her name marked eliminated on the list. Wow, I thought I'd mention that. Here's another one. Vladen Tatarsky, a Russian military blogger killed in 2023 bombing. All right, Andrea Rocelli, an Italian journalist killed in Donbass in 2014. Later added to the list, his death unaddressed by RSF. We're seeing a pattern. Yes, for sure. All right. And it's deliberate choice to shield NATO's proxy, allowing a digital death squad to target journalists without consequence. Another betrayal of journalism. So here's another one about Richard Medhurst, and not just Richard, but Alina Lip. All right. They mentioned arrested in 2024 and February 2025 under the UK's Terrorism Act. Allegedly, Ukraine reporting his devices seized. Sarah Wilkinson, we saw her arrested and detained and had her devices, and she was told she couldn't even tweet, remember, for about like a month. And I can understand why, based on the way that she tweets, because it's embarrassing to the people that are backing genocide. But again, Reporters Without Borders, silent. Alina Lip was another journalist that Tara Reid had interviewed on her show here on INN. She's facing 3 years in prison in Germany for her Donbass reporting right now. Had her bank accounts frozen. And again, Reporters Without Borders, no defense. Because she worked for, quote unquote, the other side. Kit Clarenberg. We got Kit Clarenberg too. Indie Media Award honoree Kit Clarenberg. Detained in May 2023 by UK police for Ukraine and Syria investigations. Totally ignored. We got Craig Murray. And he was detained in 2024. He was already in jail for the thing with Alex Salmon years ago. He spent time in a prison for tweeting. Sarah Bills, yep. That's another one. Okay, yeah, she's also on there. All right. The hypocrisy is infuriating. RSF's loud defense of Gershkovich, a Western journalist detained in Russia, contrasts with its silence on others targeted by the U.S. for similar national security concerns. All right. Then we've got other ignored journalists like Vanessa Beeley. All right. Harassed and detained for Syria and Palestine reporting. Absolutely. Max Blumenthal doxxed for his Syria, Ukraine, Palestine investigations. I'm guessing soon to be an Iran one too, because he went there recently. Also, no support. Reporters Without Borders. All right. Aramate is overlooked. John Pilger, censored for his Iraq and Palestine documentaries before his 2023 death, is erased from RSF's narrative. Yet another incredible Indie Media Award honoree. Influenced so many people. Mariam Stousli, the platform for Syria-Palestine commentary, not mentioned. Sonia Von Endy, doxxed in Donbass. Sharmeen Norwana, censored for Syria-Palestine, ignored. Jihan Belkin, Nazim Dashtan, killed in a Turkish drone attack. Also overlooked. Okay, again, they very famous ones. Jamal Khashoggi, Shireen, fine. But they ignore these journalists. All right. Indie Media Award honoree. All three of those, by the way. That's Vanessa, Eva, and Richie. And then you've got the big fish. Julian Assange. They were silent on Julian Assange or terrible on him for years. All right.
Yeah.
Updated list of journalists not covered. I mean, this is a killer thread, and this is just one thread. But wait, there's more. Because here's another thread called NATO's Bitch, right? So once a supposed defender of press freedom has devolved into a shameless mouthpiece for NATO with its May 15th report titled New Report, RSF and Truth Hounds Reveal Russian Strategy of Bombing Ukrainian Hotels to Silence the Press. All right. Using firsthand accounts from Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett, an X thread, evidence from Juroman AT, War Monitor, Rybar, Alina Lip, and a Twitter thread exposing their bias he recently published, this report rips apart Reporters Without Borders claims section by section. Their refusal to address Ukrainian forces' targeting of Russian journalists. We talked about that. RSF fixates on Russian attacks while turning a blind eye to Ukraine's targeting of journalists in civilian spaces, often hotels, as confirmed by independent reports. They don't like independent reports, obviously, because they ignore independent journalists.
Yeah.
Mirotvorets, the Ukrainian kill list, terrorizes journalists. Okay, so again, this is coming out of, where was this? I don't know which report this is. All right, Truth Hounds. All right, but he's going to debunk this section by section, and I would go through that. It would take a while. But here's pictures of that website where they're targeting specific people. Even Henry Kissinger's on that list. Okay. And here's Sonia Lukashova, and they have it in Cyrillic as well as in English, which is interesting because in the top right-hand corner, I seem to recall, it said Langley, Virginia. There another organization located in Langley, Virginia that you know of? I do. But anyway, I digress. RSF's credibility as a press freedom advocate is non-existent, and its once noble mission corrupted by NATO's agenda. By ignoring Ukraine's attacks on journalists while amplifying Russia's, RSF has become a willing purveyor of Western propaganda, whitewashing war crimes to fit NATO's narrative. Its silence on the kill list and complicity in Ukraine's actions reveal a moral bankruptcy that no amount of sanctimonious reports can mask. Their rise as a NATO mouthpiece, as evidenced by its funding ties and selective outrage, marks a shameful betrayal of journalists worldwide, rendering it a mockery of its former self, more propagandist than protector. That's poetry right there. That's awesome. While they are laser focused on countering Russian disinformation, forget about Western disinformation. That doesn't exist, right?
No. Is there a thing?
It also downgraded Russian news media, press freedom ranking, their press freedom ranking, and improved Ukraine's, an index they, of course, control. How convenient. Ukraine and Russia ranked 62nd and 171st, respectively. Oh, okay. Didn't what's his name, Zelensky ban all opposition media? I seem to recall that happened there.
You believe.
What's up, Dingo? Dingo's over on the Rumble. Go check us out, rumble.com/c/Indie News Network. We're live over there too. We're live everywhere. But okay, so that's the Reporters Without Borders thread. Is it a CIA and NATO created front like MSF? Well, Doctors Without Borders has indeed been linked to intelligence operations, but they do treat wounded in conflict zones. RSF is an organization far more entrenched with intel and propaganda than Doctors Without Borders. And then, of course, this is really interesting. He points out that they selectively choose to mirror restricted media in certain countries. And this came out just yesterday. So I'm like, shit, man, I guess I have to add this to the whole thing. But what he talks about here is these specific 4 websites, Sputnik, RT, 5 websites, Hispan TV and Vivo, Press TV, and CGTN. But what's really interesting is that he goes more into Reporters Without Borders background. And here's something that they did, is that concerned with censorship in certain countries, right? They decided that they're going to set up mirror image websites, almost like a Wayback Machine, to preserve them in case their press freedom disappears, okay? But they're only willing to set that up in certain countries, all right? RSF selective mirroring isn't just biased. It's a calculated move to serve Western geopolitical interests. Go figure. It's funding from Western elites like the Open Society Foundation, NED, both with ties to U.S. foreign policy, undermines its claims of neutrality. We talked about that. As already noted, they never call for protection of Western journalists who are constantly critical of Western governments when they face intimidation and lawfare at the hands of their countries. Right? So this one is Operation Collateral Freedom. RSF currently enables 23 media outlets censored in Russia and 25 outlets blocked in China to continue broadcasting independent, reliable information to the public. This is what I'm talking about with these mirror sites. So they host them on Western sites and then on Western servers in order to dent the efforts of 2 notoriously repressive states who seek to erase all journalistic information from their online networks. Wait, this... Oh, okay. Right.
Because Putin's a madman.
RSF's focus RSF's focus on mirroring media critical of governments opposing Western hegemony aligns with its mission, but it also reflects a bias toward amplifying voices that serve Western interests. What a shock. Often at the expense of balanced access to all perspectives. The absence of mirroring for state media like RT, Sputnik, and CGTN, while actively supporting their critics, underscores this bias, particularly given that RSF's Western funding comes from where it comes from. Limitations include a reliance on public resources, which may not capture all nuances, especially for less documented cases like this Hispan TV's global reach. Further research into this decision-making processes could provide more clarity on its selection criteria. I don't think we even need to look into that. We know where it comes from. The search feature is available on the website, and they consistently object when journalists from Western state-sponsored media, often with direct and indirect ties to intel agencies, are sanctioned, charged, or expelled. All right. So this goes on, and he's got this really nailed. All right. There's the second report and the first report. It's all tied together here. He says, I believe what gives the lie away is their push for state-run media to be omnipresent and well-funded. They advocate for Voice of America and Radio Free Europe, as well as many other Western propaganda sources, but they never address that it's exactly that. So, again, fuck Reporters Without Borders, because they're garbage. And they were terrible on Julian Assange. Terrible. Rebecca Vincent was good. She was their head leader for a while. The rest of Reporters Without Borders was terrible on acknowledging, how about Ola Binney, that's been persecuted like crazy. It's very selective. Look at, you can see here, Cuba is there, but where's Ecuador? Or where's El Salvador with Bukele? I mean, that's a propaganda factory down there. Come on, man. Yeah. All right, so that's. I didn't think anybody else was going to bring that Reporters Without Borders.
And Australia's fine too. They've never.
Right. No, Australia.
They've never done shit either.
Right. Well, exactly. They're in the yellow there.
Right.
All right. Notice that Canada locked up. I mean, we saw that this year. Now that was for 2025. Right. We covered.
Yep.
Charged by a Canadian citizen with harassment and jailed for 4 days. But the Press Freedom Index, all right, and we know that they're clamping down right now. All right, but
McBride in Australia.
Harps over on the Substack. Australia sucks. That's right, mate.
Fucking straight, mate.
Those fucking cunts.
You gotta go to fucking Bendigo, Morty.
Yes, I dropped a cunt on the show. Thank you, Harps. That's an homage to Harps. Harps loves saying cunt all the time. Cunt. Because he's an Aussie and they don't care. If you're able to, and it means, please support the independent media you want to see. Those are the amazing people that have already done so. The ways to do it are Cash App, $Indie News Network, Kodashfee.com/Indie News Network, PayPal.me/Indie News Network, and at INNnewsletter.com. Continue to support independent media because we need it more than ever. So many propagandists out there. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everyone. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen? 50,000 died. And now we know our mission. We form a militia, make Congress a prison.